So we should probably get round to the Conservative Manifesto. That was released over the weekend, but I was a little busy, so didn't get round to it. As there are, let's say, a dozen key points, much like all the previous ones, worth addressing. It should be pointed out by comparison to others, this is nowhere near as radical. So first, Boris wants to increase the number of nurses by 50,000. The intention is to introduce maintenance grants of between 5,000 to 8,000 a year for students who wish to become nurses. It was noted that because in 2017 this was scrapped, the number of applicants fell, so it's considered a bit of a U-turn. It should be noted though, the policy does not involve returning to the pre-2017 policy of free tuition. So it's more of a, let's do one part and see how it goes. If it doesn't work, let's do the rest. Also, this only applies to England because Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales would benefit from additional funding. They can then make up their own mind if they intend to pursue it. 2. Leave the EU in January. Well, if they get a majority, they can. Although they would have to get their entire party on side. Best of luck with that. 3. No rise in income tax, value-added tax or national insurance. Chancellor Sajid Javid and Boris Johnson want to keep a tight ship on this. But there will be a little more spending and a bit more tax, but it rises to about 1% or less than of the size of the UK's economy. The big picture is several billions a year of extra spending, not several tens of billions, which is a shot at Labour. Since it was the Conservatives that have kind of hurt the waspy women, they're trying to appease them a little, along with other pensioners, by raising the pension pot by about 2.5% every year, which is the highest it's ever been. Critics have said that keeping it in its current place is unaffordable and does not help the oldest and poorest who are on the old state pension, which is true, there are different rates. Next, no one will sell their home to pay for care. This is something many have had to do to look after those they love. And that sucks. It truly does. Boris has promised to fix the crisis in social care, but the manifesto itself contains little more than the guiding principle, and no details, to be honest, are really given. At this present time, the current system is considered to be at breaking point. Experts warning that an extra $1 billion a year won't be enough to prop it up, because the money shared equally will overstretch child services. The Tory calculations appear to be that it is best to say as little as possible rather than risk being tripped up by an issue that cost them quite a few seats at the last election. 6. Reach net zero by 2050. This is a pledge to cut emissions to virtually zero. However, at present time, the government is not going to meet its target because it is a few percent short of the current projection. 7. Spend $6.3 billion on 2.2 million disadvantaged homes. The intention being to improve energy efficiency in social housing. As most know, UK homes are quite poorly insulated, so meeting the 2050 climate commitment, a national programme needs to be created to upgrade them. This pledge to spend around $3,000 per household on improving the energy efficiency will affect 2.2 million homes, but nothing is mentioned for those who own their own home. Although I would say if you own your own home, for the most part, the responsibility should be on you to an extent. 8. Introduce a points-based system on immigration, much like that of Australia, something which many times Boris has said in Parliament. He wants to reduce net migration to less than 100,000. The focus on control means fewer low-skilled migrants being allowed into the UK. The Conservatives argue this will mean less pressure on public services, as it is these services which often rely on migrant labour. Next, continue the rollout of universal credit. This one is a highly polarising policy. Many say it's rubbish, many say it is not. Those that say it's rubbish come from their experience, and those that say it's not also speak from experience, but some also saying it as an observer not having gone through the system. I consider myself quite lucky to have not gone through the system, but I do have a relative who's on it and they have no complaints. But I will not offer an opinion on it, beyond saying the Conservatives have handled this quite badly when it came to rolling it out with their beta testing, and how it has affected families in certain areas where the cost of living doesn't match what they receive. Next, create 250,000 extra childcare places. Labour and the Liberal Democrats offer multi-billion-pound universal childcare policies for preschool children. Conservatives offer something that's considered a bit more strategic, to offer 250,000 childcare places extra during the holidays for primary school-aged children, about 5% of that age group. It would cost £250 million per year for 3 years. This is all remarkably reminiscent of Tony Blair, with its pre-austerity expansion of breakfast clubs, after-school clubs, holiday clubs. So it is an interesting policy to reignite. 11. Student finances. A freeze of tuition fees at £9,250 likely to continue. As tuition fees and education are a devolved issue, this policy change only affects England. Now, the freeze of the tuition in England at the current level will have the same effect as the cut proposed by the ALGA panel because of inflation, interest rates on student loans being reviewed again. Liberal Democrats and Labour, by comparison, want to simply make it free, which would be impossible. 12. A new Manchester to Leeds rail line. The intention there is to create some more high-speed rail. Most are against this. I don't see it as a bad thing, but what do I know? I just like trains. Finally, launch a democracy commission to look into the constitutional power balance. Because of the Supreme Court's ruling in September, Boris Johnson's advice to the Queen to prorogue Parliament being unlawful, that is, this is the latest and most dramatic example of judicial review. Some believe it has pulled the judiciary too far into the areas of political decision-making. The Conservatives have proposed Constitution, Democracy and Rights Commission as a new way to look at the power balance between the three great institutions of state: the executive, which is the government and the crown, Parliament and the judiciary. As you can tell from the majority of what you've heard today, there isn't really too much going on. These are the key talking points, but there's not as much radical movement. And I think it's because they have to play safe. If the Conservatives make policies that stand out like Labour, they will get picked at like Labour's. Labour's policies are insane. It is essentially spend, spend, spend. There's no money left. Don't worry, we just keep spending, fam. We'll just keep spending. That's their policy because they think they're building a better future for the next generation. Well, the problem there is that next generation will be the one that has to pick up the pieces for the quality of life they got, which many of them will then say, that was it? That was all you did? That wasn't worth it? Why is Corbyn dead? Can we resurrect him? Because I want him to pay for this.